For a few crazy years, a Rolex was not really a watch. It was a money printer. You could walk into a dealer, get told there was a 3-year waiting list, walk out with nothing, and then find that exact same watch selling online for double the price. People were not buying these to wear them. They were flipping them like houses. And the golden rule, repeated on every forum and in every group chat, was simple. A Rolex only goes up. So here is what should make you stop and think. The people who understood that game better than anyone are now quietly doing the exact opposite. They are selling. Steel Sports Rolexes have lost as much as half of their value since the peak. The flippers have packed up and gone home. And this next part should genuinely stop you cold. Rolex itself has quietly gone into the business of selling used Rolexes. So the real question is not whether the boom is over. It is over. The real question is why the smartest money in the room is walking out the door, and far more interesting than that, where every dollar of it is going instead. Because these people are not just selling, they are buying something else. To understand why they are leaving, you have to understand how insane it got. Rewind to the pandemic years. Interest rates were near zero. People were trapped at home with money they could not spend on holidays or restaurants, and a strange idea took hold. Everyone decided a steel Rolex was the single safest place on earth to park cash. Demand went vertical. Waiting lists for the popular models stretched past 3 years, and dealers would not even sell you the good stuff unless you first bought a pile of jewelry you did not want. So a second market exploded to meet the demand. Picture a Submariner that listed at retail for around $9,000. On the open market, it was trading for $17,000, $18,000 and climbing. Nothing about the watch had changed. Same steel, same movement, same watch that came out of the same factory. It just kept rising week after week. For one reason and one reason only. It had risen the week before. That is not a healthy watch market. That is a bubble. And every single person standing inside it was completely convinced it would never pop. In March of 2022, it popped. And the fall was not gentle. Since that peak, the steel sports models, the very watches everyone had been fighting over, have lost anywhere from 30 to 50% of their value. The Daytona, the crown jewel of the whole craze, fell from highs above $50,000 down into the mid-30s. By the start of 2025, Rolex prices on the secondary market had sunk to a 4-year low, actually dropping below where they had been back in January of 2021. That was 11 straight quarters of decline, almost 3 years of a watch that supposedly only goes up, quietly going down instead. And the flippers, the crowd that was only ever in it for the fast profit, did what that crowd always does when the music stops. They dumped everything and ran for the exit. The era of buying a Rolex on Monday and selling it on Friday for a few thousand in profit is simply over, outside of a tiny handful of the very hottest references. Try to sell your Rolex to a dealer today, and you will be offered well below the online price. Put it on consignment instead, and after the fees come out, a lot of people are quietly taking a loss on the watch they were promised could only go up. Imagine being the person who finally won that game in early 2022. You waited 2 years, you bought the jewelry you did not even want just to get on the list. You paid $18,000 for a watch that listed at $9,000, and you told yourself it was an investment, the safest one you had ever made. Today, that same watch might get you 11 or 12 if you are lucky. You did nothing wrong. You just believed the exact rule everyone believed at the precise moment it stopped being true. Then it got even stranger. All the way through this slide, Rolex kept doing the one thing you would never expect from a company watching its resale prices fall. It kept raising its retail prices every single January, like clockwork. And that quietly closed the gap that made flipping possible in the first place, the space between the retail price and the higher street price. For years, close to 70% of Rolex models traded above their retail price on the secondary market. Today, it is nearer to half, and a growing number now trade for less than retail. Think about what that actually means. For certain models, walking into a boutique and paying full sticker price has become the expensive option, because the same watch, barely worn, is sitting cheaper online. To put real numbers on it, a current steel Submariner might carry a retail sticker of around $7,400, while a 2 or 3-year-old one, barely used, quietly changes hands for somewhere between $6,200 and $6,800. The person who waited years for the privilege of paying full price often ended up paying the most. But the single loudest signal of all did not come from a flipper or a dealer. It came from Rolex itself. In 2022, the company that built its entire empire on scarcity quietly launched its own certified pre-owned program. Rolex, selling second-hand Rolexes. And this is no little side experiment. In just 1 year, that business did over $500 million, growing by more than 60%. When the house that spent a century convincing the world its watches were rare, precious, once-in-a-lifetime treasures decides to open its own second-hand shop, it is telling you exactly where it thinks this market is heading. Now let me be completely straight with you, because this is the exact point where the clickbait channels start lying, and I am not going to. This is not a crash, Rolex is not dying, and anyone screaming that the brand is finished is just selling you a scarier story. The honest truth is the opposite of what the panic sellers want you to believe. That insane boom was the strange part. The fall is not. Take the slow, steady climb Rolex prices were on for years before the pandemic, extend that line forward, and the market today sits almost exactly where it always should have been. The bubble was the lie. This is just the correction, cleaning it up. And the real picture is messier than any single scary headline. The different market trackers do not even fully agree with each other. Some had prices bottoming out and slowly climbing again through 2025, while others had them still drifting lower. Patek Philippe, Rolex's great rival, actually held its value far better through the whole thing. A clean story of total collapse is easy to sell to you, but it is simply not what the data shows. And Rolex is still one of only 3 brands on the entire planet whose watches reliably hold most of their value over time. The steel Daytona is still white hot. Gold Rolex models are actually holding up better than the steel ones. So nobody serious is tossing their Rolex in a drawer and writing it off. What is really happening is quieter, and honestly far more interesting than any crash. The people who know watches best have simply stopped treating a Rolex as a guaranteed lottery ticket and started asking a much smarter question. If a steel Rolex is no longer the automatic moneymaker it used to be, then what is actually worth owning now? If you are getting real value out of this, instead of the usual recycled hype, take a second to subscribe, because I break down what is genuinely happening in the watch world every week, with none of the nonsense. Now for the good part, where all that smart money actually went. When collectors rotated out of the hype steel Rolex, they moved in 3 very clear directions, and the first one is almost funny. They went to Tudor. Tudor is Rolex's own little sibling, founded by the very same man back in 1926 to be the more affordable version of the crown. For decades, it lived quietly in Rolex's shadow. Not anymore. Tudor builds its own movements now, Held to accuracy standards that arguably beat Rolex's own, it has a bit of real personality that stiff, conservative Rolex would never dare show, and best of all, you can actually walk into a shop and buy one today. Same DNA, a fraction of the price, none of the waiting list drama. Collector demand for Tudor, both the new watches and the vintage ones, has been surging, and the gap between a vintage Tudor and the nearly identical vintage Rolex sitting right beside it is exactly the kind of quiet value the smart money loves. The second direction is upward, into the world of independent watchmakers, names most people have never heard of, like Journey or Voutilainen. These are makers who produce only a few hundred watches a year, sometimes far fewer, many of them finished by hand. Owning one is not about a logo the whole world recognizes, it is about authorship. It is about wearing something genuinely rare that a real human being actually built. In this new market, permanence became the flex. A proven one of a kind quietly beats the hyped watch of the month every single time. And the third direction points straight backward into vintage, which is exactly where we spent our last video. While brand new steel Rolexes were sliding downhill, real vintage grails were setting record prices at auction for one unbeatable reason. They can never be reprinted. There is only ever one of each, and time already decided which of them survived. Look inside the auction rooms, and you can watch the money moving in real time. At a single Phillips sale in Hong Kong, not long ago, collectors threw the equivalent of tens of millions of dollars at vintage Pateks and old Daytonas, blowing straight past every estimate in the catalog. And quietly, in the background, gold Rolex has become one of the few corners of the brand that many now consider genuinely undervalued, with the raw gold inside some models worth a serious chunk of the sale price all on its own. The pattern is the same everywhere you look. The money left the hype and went hunting for substance. So here's what all of this actually means for you, whether you already own a Rolex or you have wanted one your whole life. That old rule, the one everyone treated like a law of physics, that a Rolex only goes up, is dead. And honestly, that is good news. Because the moment a watch stops being a lottery ticket, it goes back to being a watch. You are no longer bidding against an army of flippers and staring down a 3-year waiting list. For the first time in half a decade, you can buy the watch you actually love at a price that finally makes some sense for the only reason that was ever any good in the first place. Because you want to wear it on your own wrist. The people quietly selling off their Rolexes are not panicking. They just stopped pretending a steel sports watch was a savings account. And once you learn to see the market that clearly, you start to notice something even stranger hiding in it. That some of the most valuable watches on earth were never the shiny, famous, in-demand ones at all. Sometimes the real fortune is sitting in the ugliest, most beaten-up watch in the entire room. And that is a story worth telling you next.